Yesterday, I uploaded a couple of tutorials that talked about how to create the phase 1 representation of this verse in 2 Kings chapter 5. It's verse 1. And today, I'm going to show you how to generate the phase 2 representation starting from this text. Now, although you can just do phase 1, and that could be helpful for us, it really helps to understand how the phase 2 works in order to do the phase 1. So I'm going to show you how to do that, and some of you may be able to do the phase 2 also. Okay, so I have this text, and I am going to copy it, and I'm going to paste that into TBTA. So here's the TBTA program. Now I'm going to go to the place I want to go to, proposition analysis. So utilities and then proposition analysis. Now, I should have a space for 2 Kings now, but in a previous time when I was talking with some people about this, they asked, well, what if they don't have the space set up for a particular Bible book? And so I mentioned, well, you could work temporarily, like in Bible Stories 80 or something like that. So it's in, when you click on Reference, Mission Documents, Bible Stories, let's say I choose 81. 81 verse 1. Oh, I already have something there. Okay, well, somewhere up high, like at verse 80, you'll find some empty space, and pretty soon that'll be fixed so that there'll be more empty space to work in. So here I've already put something in here at 80, but this would be blank for you because this is like a scratch space for me working. Another possibility would be to go to grammar introduction, I think, and then to my examples. And so there should be some space that you can use here. There happened to be something in my examples 1:1. That was because I was trying out something in that space, but there's nothing in verse 2 in the text here to analyze. So anyway, this is kind of a scratch space you could use. But in my case, hopefully it'll be there. So let's see, 2 Kings chapter 5 verse 1. So I go there, and it went there, so I have the reference 2 Kings 5:1, and now I can do edit text, and I'm going to paste in that text. And it came out pretty big, but that's because somehow it kept the formatting from Word. If I save it and then click edit text again, then you'll see it in a smaller font so you can see the whole thing. Okay, now I'm in the Analyzer. At the title bar at the top of the window it says Analyzer Bible. That shows you you're in the Analyzer, and we need to be in the Analyzer to use the computer's system to try to convert to phase 2. And so now I'm going to click Analyze. Now, sometimes the Analyzer gets it right, and sometimes it doesn't. So we will see. Okay, it got something there. So I'm going to click Save Analysis, and that was a good sign because sometimes it'll give you error messages. Okay, so you see this complex structure. The clause boundaries have the big double brackets, and the subordinate, the main clause boundaries have the big double brackets, and the subordinate clauses have the little double brackets here and here, and noun phrases and verb phrases, etc., have these single brackets. So there are lots of features associated with these syntactical units. Syntax refers to the structure of a sentence and the way that parts of the sentence are put together. If I hover the mouse over this list of letters to the right of the main clause boundary, the double left bracket, then I see it's an independent clause, declarative, and it's most agent-like, and if you look down farther, it says location and paragraph discourse title. So that's good because the first sentence was God, title paren, causes Naaman to become healthy. So that's supposed to be a title, and the analyzer used that left parenthesis title, right parenthesis to make it a title. So it looks like all the features are correct. Now you can also click on features as one of the buttons on the lower right, and then click on this here. Okay, so there are clause features, and independent means it's a main clause. So that's what we want. There are other possibilities for other types of clauses, like a restrictive thing modifier would say like the man who was from Syria. Who was from Syria would be a restrictive clause, telling which man you're talking about. Or like an event modifier that would be when Paul left the house, Paul saw Mary. Well, when he left the house is an event modifier, modifying the seeing Mary. So then the second column has the illocutionary force. I don't even know what that means, but it's telling what kind of sentence this is. Declarative is just saying something. Imperative is a command. Then there are various kinds of question options, like a yes-no interrogative means a yes-no question. The third one, topic NP, is it most agent-like or most patient-like? So what that means is passive is most agent-like is where it says Paul went to the city, or Paul took the book. Okay, so it's the ordinary way of writing a sentence. Most patient-like would be the passive. So the book was taken by Paul, because the focus is on the book. You see, you start the sentence with that. So the patient is the thing that's acted upon. Paul took the book. So Paul is the agent, he's doing the acting, and the book is what was taken. We call that the patient, the thing that's acted on. And so most patient-like for a clause would mean it's in the passive. The book was taken. We don't need to bother with the speaker here. We may need to fill in these features later, but for right now, we can ignore these. They're there in case they are needed. There are other features as well, kind of saying what kind of attitude does the speaker have, what's the speaker's age, what's the relationship between the speaker and the listener. So there are a lot of features that we're not currently worrying about, but they may be necessary in the future, so we have spaces for them. The kind of speech are we talking about? This says discourse genre. It's just the kind of speech. And what kind of purpose does this text have? So you can see there, here's one where we do use sometimes. salience band. We use flashback, which becomes the what we call English the perfect. John has seen Mary. And backgrounded action. John was seeing Mary. Okay, and another thing we do use is sequence. But although I'm not sure that we don't need that for a main clause. This is useful for a subordinate clause. And so if you have a subordinate clause, you might say, John, who was a man and who lived in Ephesus. So the first coordinate would be who was a man, and the last coordinate was who lived in Ephesus. And then this last one here is where you see that it was a title. So it says location in the paragraph, discourse title. We have a place for implicit information. This is just a title, so we don't need this, but sometimes we add extra information that helps you understand the Bible. There's cultural information, situational, historical background. We don't need that here. And we have kinds of alternates. So primary analysis would mean the main text that we want to say, but we can have the following sentence could be an alternate. First alternate, second alternate. That's when, especially when we're not sure of the meaning, so we give some alternates for the translators. There's something called the vocabulary alternate. We're not going to deal with that yet. Okay, so this is all has the right features. Now, the noun phrase here is God. And I'm explaining this right now in much greater detail than you're going to need, but when you go through it, and I'll go through the later sentences more quickly. But we can see there are a bunch of noun features for the noun phrase. So let's click on that. Well, let's look at the pop-up first. It says it's not in a sequence. So if we said the Father and Jesus, then we'd have two noun phrases, and there would be a first one and a second one. This is most agent-like. That means that God is the agent of this sentence. He's the one who's doing the acting. In this case, he's causing. It's not implicit information. So if this were an argument that we didn't necessarily want to say in the sentence, but the verb requires that as an argument, we can make it an implicit argument. And let's see, anything else? Don't think there's anything we need there, but let's click on it. So it's not in a sequence. There's just God who's doing the acting. It's not God and Jesus. That's a little bit heretical to say that, but suppose we said the Father and Jesus. Semantic role is it's the agent, so it's most agent-like. It's not implicit information, so we're not going to check implicit argument. And relativize, that will usually occur automatically, but that would mean like John, who was a man. Well, it would be relativized, I think, if it's the John in the subordinate clause. Okay, so this is all we need, I think, for that. You can ignore all these ones that have the blue shading or just have unspecified. Okay, so that's fine. Cause is so God, let's see. There are features for God. And if we look over it, we see it's noun index, list index 1, lexical sense A. There's only one sense for God. Down in the bottom right, you can see that God is the first noun that's been recognized as a noun in this sentence. That's why it's noun list 1. and it's routine. So I usually use routine for God because God just is throughout the whole Bible. So we consider that he's been mentioned before, which is what we associate with routine. So if we click on God, we see some features. Singular, there's only one God. Routine, he's been mentioned before. Affirmative, that means it's God, and if we said not God, or no man saw the house. Okay, so that would be negative polarity for no man. Proximity, usually this is where we want to say this or that. In this case, it's not applicable, but contextually near would be that. Contextually near with focus would be this. There are other possibilities, like one thing, if someone's speaking and he's talking about something that's near the speaker and the listener, we could check this. Person, that's a very important feature, the third person. So we're saying God, it's not I, it's not God talking and he says I. That would be first person, or it's not God talking, it's not us talking to God and we say you, then it would be second person. Noun is what we usually have for the surface realization, something that we want always to be a noun. We can click that. We don't usually do that, but there are some cases like if we say people of Israel, I don't want it to say people of it. I want it really to be people of Israel, so I would click always a noun for Israel. The main ones in this next column that I use are significant location and significant time. So if you say, at that city, Paul saw Mary, and you want at that city to be at the front of the sentence, you can mark that as a significant location. At that time, something happened. Okay, so those are all good. So now let's look at the features for the verb phrase. It says it's not in a sequence. I'm not actually sure what that's for because we never put, we never do coordinates. Coordinates where you tie something together with and with verb phrases. So that's probably not necessary. So there doesn't seem to be any necessary feature that we need for verb phrase. Let's go to cause the verb. So hovering over that, I see it's the lexical sense A. I don't think there's more than one sense of cause. It says it's present tense. We usually use the present tense for titles. Aspect is unmarked. Okay, we'll talk about these when I look at the different choices. If you look down, it says polarity affirmative. So that means that he is causing instead of God did not cause, then that would be negative. Okay, so just to see some of the choices, let's click on this. I've already clicked on features. So we usually use present tense for titles. So there are some different choices here. The most common ones are discourse is what we use for just telling a story. Immediate future is something that's going to happen immediately. Then there are various types of past or future. So early, you can say immediate past, earlier today, yesterday, 2 days ago. And there are similar choices for future. One that I use sometimes is unknown future. That's when it's kind of in the distant future. Okay, aspect. So this is unmarked, but Inceptive means that it starts to happen. And, when you look at this, you might say, oh my gosh, I don't know what inceptive means. But look, if I hover the mouse over inceptive, it gives a little pop-up that says, emphasizes the beginning of the action. John started walking. So that little pop-up is very helpful. There's completive, and the pop-up tells you it means finished. John finished walking. Cessative, John stopped walking. Cessation means stopping. Continuative means John continued talking. Imperfective, this says it's only used in direct quotes. John is sleeping. So it's going on. It's a process that's going on. Routine is means that John routinely walks to work. It's something that usually happens. Habitual, regularly walks to work. Gnomic is always true. God is love. And unmarked here means we don't have to worry about any special aspects. So unmarked is fine here. Let's see, what was the sentence? God causes Naaman to become healthy. So that's something that happens once. Unmarked is fine. If this were something that God always causes us to do, it might be gnomic. Okay, mood. You can say that something is probably happening. It's definitely happening. It might happen. It might not happen. It's unlikely that it happens. It's impossible that it would happen. It must happen. It should happen. Should not. It's forbidden. You must not do something, or you may do something. But here, it's just indicative saying that something happened. So that's what indicative means here. Reflexivity. Okay, so reciprocal means that people do it to one another. Reflexive means to himself, something to himself. So not applicable is the normal one here. God is causing something else to happen. And it's not an acting on kind of case anyway. It's not saw himself. So it causes something to happen. It wouldn't really, these other possibilities wouldn't be applicable. Polarity, affirmative, negative, this really happened, God causes, so affirmative is the right one. Emphatic affirmative, it's definitely happening. So that kind of overlaps with the definite potential. Okay, adjective degree, don't worry. Oh, yes, there are some cases. If you're saying something happens too much, or less, or least. Intensified, we associate with very. Superlative, comparative, comparing something. Okay. I'm not actually sure what these do here, but did too much. That's something I would use, or less. Okay. Don't worry about target aspect and target mood, so forget all of those things. Okay, so those features are fine for cause. Now if we put the mouse over cause, it tells us the arguments to cause something to happen. There's an obligatory, look over there in this cream colored box that popped up. And theta grid, which is the argument structure, has an obligatory patient. So that's God in this case. And they're an optional instrument. Well, we don't need that. That would do something with something. An obligatory patient proposition. So it has to have a proposition. God causes something to happen. That should be in the subordinate clause. And so, if we hover the mouse over the features for the subordinate clause. We say it's a patient or object complement. So for cause, we needed an obligatory patient proposition. And for this one, we see that the type of the clause is patient. So that matches up, it's the right type. We see it's declarative. It's saying something happened. Naaman becomes healthy. It's most agent-like. So it's Naaman becomes healthy. It's not, well, it wouldn't be applicable, but because you can't put that in the passive. But if it was John saw Mary, it might be Mary was seen by John. So this is an agent-like topic noun phrase. And is there anything else we need to worry about? Nope, I don't see anything. And we've already gone over clause features for the main clause, so I'm not going to go into that. So now I'm going to drag the mouse over the noun phrase that's Naaman, and we just check here that it's most agent-like. As I mentioned in another tutorial, you can see these things from, some of these things from these letters. So if you look at NP-SAN, the S is for not in a sequence. Seems kind of strange, but that's the letter that's used for that. S for not in a sequence. And then the letter A, the next one, is for agent-like. So that's showing that it's an agent-like noun phrase. So you can see that just from that S-A-N. And then Naaman, it's routine. That could be first mention. I wonder what would happen if I put that as first mention. I don't know, but I'm going to say that. I don't think it'll make any difference for a name. Okay, and it's third person, so we're talking about Naaman. It's not I or you. Okay, so become, this is the right form of become, predicative. So it has a predicate or an adjective argument. So if you look down at the argument structure, it doesn't show it in the theta grid, but if you look at the examples, data 212, there's an adjective phrase that's a predicative, angry. The king became angry. So we've already talked about verb phrase features, and there's nothing there we need to worry about. For the verb features, it's present. In a subordinate clause, that would be quite frequent to put present because sometimes the feature is determined by the main clause. But present, I think, is okay here. It's indicative, it's happening. It's not inceptive or starting or ceasing, cessative. It's affirmative, it's yes, it's happening. Okay, so the adjective phrase, the main thing we need to make sure is the adjective phrase is predicative. It's not in a sequence, so this is just one argument here, healthy. And so you can see this from the letters. The S is for not in a sequence, and the P is for predicative. If we click on the adjective features, you can see the different choices. If it is in a sequence, it could be the first coordinate, the last coordinate, or coordinate means a middle choice. So if you had 3, the second one would be coordinate. So there are only 2 in the usage column. There are 2 that we need to be concerned with. Attributive is if you say a bad man. Predicative if you say the man was bad as the argument of a verb. So these are correct. Then healthy, If it's having good health, that's the sense we want. And if we put the mouse over the adjective, we can see the features. It's lexical sense A, it's the form we wanted, so that's fine. No degree, so that it could be intensified, so it could be very healthy. And so that's seems to be the main feature we need to be concerned on. If we click on it, we see the choices. Comparative would be more healthy, superlative would be most healthy, intensified would be very healthy, extremely intensified, extremely healthy, too healthy, I don't know how you can be too healthy, less healthy, least healthy, superlative of 2 items, the colder or coldest of 2, and the least of 2 items. So anyway, this is fine, no degree is fine here. Okay, so I didn't change anything, and I think we've gone on for a while, so I think I'm going to stop this tutorial. I'm going to go through the other sentences in this verse more quickly next time, but I'm going to stop for now since it's been a few minutes.